And I also have with me Dr. Andrew Coonrat. Andrew, when you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Sid. My name is Andrew Coonrat. I'm with the Bucks County IU. Welcome to everybody.
Shortly with the Bucks County IU. You're transitioning to
A local school district to be a supervisor for curriculum instruction. So I'm very much looking forward to working with everybody.
Yeah, we're gonna miss him in the intermediate unit community without a doubt. So thanks to everybody who's joined us this morning. We also have some closed captioning that are available. Nicole had put the link into the chat, and I'm also going to put the slide deck into the chat. I linked it a little bit earlier, but if you had joined us afterward, it's going to be the same file. So if you see it in there 2 times, it's going to be the same file. I'm going to throw that in there now, and that way you all should have access to the slide deck that Andrew and I are going to be referring. So as you know, this is part of the Accelerated Learning Series, and we're going to talk about a variety of different things, but particularly today is the concept of assessment literacy. We're going to drill into a lot of these components today, and I want you to rest assured that everything that we're showing you and talking about today, it's going to be recorded, it's going to be archived somewhere on the web, whether it's you have the slide deck or whether it's in a Google folder or whatnot. It's always there for you. And lastly, you can always email me or Andrew at any time to make sure that you have the resources you need to be successful. So I'm going to share my screen. And Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm good to go.
Okay, so you should be able to see my screen, Andrew. Can you? Mike's shaking his head. Thanks, Mike. Okay, great. I also want to encourage the use of the chat feature. Just a couple of norms about this. You're not going to offend me or Andrew. Even if you want to unmute yourself throughout the course of what we're sharing and say, hey, Nick, I got a question. Hey, Andrew, I got a question. Or you can use the chat feature too. I'm also going to take some e-breaks here within this hour and a half. So I know we're all super important. We're all getting super important email messages, phone calls, texts, and things like that. So we have that worked in. And like I said, don't hesitate to stop us. We want you to make the most out of this. The slide deck that I did share with you, the second slide links out to a website that you are probably very familiar with, and that is the Accelerated Learning splash page. Many different resources here, concepts as we drill into today. We're going to be focusing on high quality academics and so on and so forth, but that resource is always there for you. The Department of Education did a fantastic job putting this together for our local education agencies. Jump back on you. And as you saw from that slide before, we noted our accelerated learning has those 4 components of high quality academics, those supportive learning environments that are conducive for learning. So as our kiddos walk through the door, as our staff walk through the door, they're motivated to be in a spot that they want to learn. A healthy systems conditions, what are the functionalities, managing processes, as well as those scaffolded supports, a system of scaffolded supports, right in line with a multi-tiered system of support. Why are we here today? We want to focus on a high quality academics. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to take a second to read through this description right underneath where it says high quality academics. As we experienced the pandemic, we were all caught off guard, and we had to shift gears on the fly, build a plane in the air, as we heard so many times. But the definition of the instructional change is needed. As we move into a post-COVID world, there is definitely a need for instructional changes, whether your system is implementing a hybrid approach, where you're going to have kiddos at home connecting virtually with one of the common terminologies we use up in our northwest corner is we call them roomies or zoomies. So we have systems that are actually planning to connect post-COVID with kiddos that want to connect via Zoom to their Algebra 1 class from home. So they're offering those opportunities. Those types of instructional changes still need to take place and ensure that good teaching is good teaching. Good teaching takes place in a virtual environment. It takes place in a face-to-face environment or in a hybrid environment. We're going to drill into what it looks like to design an effective and high-quality assessment. And Andrew, jump in if you want to add anything. You're not going to hurt my feelings. As we take a look at high-quality academics, read through that top bullet that's starred and says assess. Let's open up the chat feature just for 10, 30 seconds. If you don't have the chat open, go ahead and open that up. And tell me what comes to mind. You can type a couple of things. You can type a particular product or tool that you use. What comes to mind when you think of an informal or formal assessment? 30 seconds, go. Great. Progress monitoring, screeners, map testing, assessing all students, CDT, exact path, benchmarking, yep, screeners for an MTSS framework. Great. Kahoot, yeah. That's great. There's a couple of nouns in there in terms of benchmark, diagnostic, and we're going to talk about things like that. Maps, universal screeners, super important for those primary grades, whether it's behavior or academics, without a doubt. So thank you for your participation in that. And what we're going to look at after that top bullet, Andrew's going to dive into a little bit in terms of later on in a second part of this on Thursdays is creating that local assessment plan, and then lastly, analyzing and interpreting that data for accelerating student learning. Once you extrapolate that data, what kind of instructional changes are you going to be putting in place? So it's a cycle that comes back full circle for reflecting, monitoring, and sharing that data with the students. If you're a user of the CDTs, it's highly recommended that you have a student conference, a one-to-one conference. There's a lot of research behind making your participants or your students aware of where they sit academically. And I think some of John Hattie's research in visible learning quotes a high effect size of student self-assessment. So that not only are they being aware of where they stand academically, but then giving them the latitude to create that self-assessment and measuring themselves. Did I master said academic content? So food for thought. Like we had shared, assessment literacy and designing local assessments. The assessment literacy series has been around for some time. I'm going to jump down one more. And we're going to jump out to it on the SAS portal. But today we're going to be focusing on what does it mean to have a valid and reliable measure? And then what can I do? What are some turnkey things that I can do myself or I can pass along to staff on the front lines for immediate review and application? So I want to come back to this bullet that you see at the top. We're going to give you some resources that are deep. They're huge. The assessment literacy series that's on the PD SAS portal is deep. It's comprehensive. You may want to take some pieces. May want to take the whole thing. You may want to take some pieces of today and pass it along to some of your staff. We've done this. We've done the assessment literacy training at quite a few districts out in Conneaut School District, and it's really rewarding to see an educator come through the door with an assessment that they designed. and say, holy smokes, this assessment is designed, and let alone the one they designed, one that they have from a vendor, these questions that are written at a depth of knowledge level, 80% of them are written at a DOK level 1. To see that light bulb go off and say, holy smokes, no wonder their performance on my local assessments, they're doing really well. But whenever we transfer that over to a standardized assessment, like the PSSA or Keystone, they're experiencing questions written at a DOK level 2 and 3. So that's what we're going to give you. We're going to give you some of those turnkey tools that you can put into the hands of your teachers to start reviewing their local assessments, whether they're purchased or designed. I'm going to pause for a second and open up the mic or open up the chat. Should anyone have any questions, feel free, please feel free. Also, for those of you who joined us a little bit late, I just re-uploaded the slide deck to the chat, so you'll be able to pull that out of there today. Feel free to throw anything in the chat, unmute. All right, I'm going to take that silence as let's move on, Nick. I talked about the SAS portal in the assessment literacy series that's linked there. On slide 9, I want to point out that these are all hyperlinked, and I'm going to jump out to this top resource. I'm also going to share my screen so you can see what the assessment literacy series looks like on our SAS portal. If you were successful in clicking the top link on slide 9, you're going to see something that looks like this. There's 6 different modules in this comprehensive assessment literacy series, and it is deep. I'll tell you that it gets the educator, and no matter what level you are at, thinking about the assessment and the purpose. A large part of what we're going to be talking about is under module 2, items and forms, but module 1 is certainly applicable as well. If you're thinking about utilizing some of these resources just to get a grasp of what's in there, I would start out with a PowerPoint as well as the facilitator guide. And should you elect to flip this in some capacity, whether it's for professional development or put it into the hands of your teachers, you have blank templates, handouts, participant materials, and references there as well. But I do want to call out the facilitator guide for module 1. Darlene, you're not able to download the slide deck. Okay, Darlene, could you throw your email into the chat, and Andrew would be.
I took care of it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Right now.
So what we're looking at here is in module 1, the facilitator guide, and this is already populated for you. So should you elect that you want to flip this in some capacity, I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make this a little bit more easy to read. It walks the user through step by step after slide 1 to do this, after slide 2 to do this. And it kicks off with an anticipation guide. Prior to even module 1, you're going to have this educator, whoever's on the receiving end of this, taking a time to stop and reflect about assessment design. In the handouts, anything that's italicized, it will be blank. Some of the questions that go along with it. And this is simply a reflective process. So one of the main questions that we always like to ask, I always like to ask when facilitating assessment literacy, and I'm going to open it up to chat. So I'd like you to open up your chat, and I'd like you to type in an answer to this question. Why do educators assess students? Take a second to think about that. Type a response in the chat. Why do educators assess students? Determine skill level, mastery of content, grade level standards, student needs, understanding of content. Just instruction. Jennifer Ross coming from right field. Thanks, Jennifer. Remediation and more practice is needed. Great, Corey. Why do they? They do it for grades, not measuring growth. Stu? Great. Thank you for participating in that. And that's a lot of the feedback that you generally get, particularly from your teachers of upperclassmen, is I have to have a value. I have to have a value to report on into that report card or whatnot. When we get into the primary grades, you'll find a lot more of the answers is to adjust instruction. And my question as a secondary educator, why wasn't I taking that assessment, taking that data, adjusting my instruction because I failed to convey that understanding of the executive branch of the United States government? I did something wrong. I did something wrong. I did not just move right along, even though 65% of my students mastered that content. It was not good enough for me. So our underlying purpose for our assessments is to measure that understanding and to adapt and overcome, to help our kiddos meet that threshold. I'm going to jump back to accelerated learning. You should be able to pull out some components from that SAS assessment literacy portion. It's comprehensive and it's deep. What we've done in our region is we have streamlined a lot of the assessment literacy. A lot of times I don't have time to do 6 separate modules with educators because I'm dealing with maybe a half of a day on an Act 80 day or whatnot. So I'm going to jump us out to this link here where it says click here or type in your tiny URL. And I'm going to share with you, and again, I'm still on slide 9, the resources that we're going to be using here in the next hour. So if you were successful, click here, you should see a Google folder that looks like this. I'm also going to pull it up on my screen, but the document of focus for the next minute or two is a Word document right here in the center that's called Fair Assessment Guide. Go ahead and double click on this document. Now I want you to take the next 2 or 3 minutes in this document, PDE's Fair Assessment Explanation. Go through each column, breaking down the 4 types of fair assessments that are utilized in our LEAs today. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Let's open up the chat. I want you to take a second and think about a particular type of assessment that's used in your system, whether it be diagnostic, formative, benchmark, or summative. Open up the chat, type in the type of fair assessment, and perhaps give a little bit of a description. You can give a name. For example, I'll use benchmark NWEA map. That's a benchmark measure. A diagnostic, if you use a diagnostic, just identify that type of assessment. What type of assessments are happening in your system? Identify them, the name of it, and the type. Thank you, Annette. Ready's diagnostic. L. Stevens, thank you. Exact pass. That's one I'm not familiar with. Stu, diagnostic, CDTs, right on. Thank you, Kate. Mike, Cadence, benchmark, summative, running records. Yep, CDTs, diagnostic. How about some formative? Let's jump there for a second. Think of a formative assessment. What are some formative assessments you know are being used in your system? You can type those in the chat as well. Spelling analysis. Cahoots, yep. Tickets out the door, great. Thank you, Annette, for spelling out that acronym. I didn't know what the TAUD was. Yeah, exit tickets, formative, great. Yeah, the formative assessment is that quick check. It's the pulse on the learning within your room. And this is where you're going to get the worksheets, brainwebs. Yep. I know, wonder to learn. That's keeping the pulse on the learning and figuring out, holy smokes, I really didn't do a good job on that particular portion of the executive branch. Might have to revisit that tomorrow based on this formative assessment. Those, in my opinion, and I think Dylan William would also argue, that are probably the most effective means of guiding instruction or your formative assessments. So we're going to jump back to our slide deck. In the worth it portion of accelerated learning, take a second to read through this. Pay particular attention to the italicized text. When we first started this endeavor way back in March, and I saw this description from the Department of Education, I was super pleased to see how comprehensive it was. Some of the text that I italicized just really jumps out at me. Not only formal, but the use of informal assessments, such as a formative assessment, super powerful. It's balanced. And you can also use things like NWEA map in conjunction with the CDT. But most importantly, I was so happy to see this as involving students in evaluation of their own work. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, if you can reach that threshold of students doing a self-evaluation, measuring their confidence, truthfully measuring their confidence and mastery of said academic content, that carries some of the highest effect size, according to John Hattie's visible learning work. One-to-one student conferencing with CDTs. And then the adoption of a systematic approach enhances the use of assessment data to inform teaching and learning practices. So we're going to shift on the fly with an informal or a formal data. We're going to figure out what we're going to do. Nick's not just going to give that end of chapter summative test on the Constitution with and say, 65%, that's good enough for me. I'm going to move on. No, because that's foundational to understanding the checks and balances system, so on and so forth. So that's informing my teaching instructional practice. And always, the department gives our local entities the latitude to align these assessments with their values and goals, curriculum, teaching, and learning, because it's different all across our Commonwealth. And the key actions for assessing. Connecting this back to accelerated learning, we're going to look at these bottom two. Oops, I'm sorry. We're going to get into the nitty gritty here. Are we sure that it's high quality, rigorous, and implemented with fidelity? Many of us have heard the term common assessments. If we have a large district, is that ninth grade assessment that's happening in 4 different buildings across our district? Is that the same measure? And is it being measured with fidelity? Is it equitable, accessible, and inclusive? That's a huge, huge undertaking. This is right from the SAS portal assessment literacy series. Take a second to absorb this table, super important. It was a number of years ago, the Data Recognition Corps, DRC, they're the creators. We work hand in hand with Pennsylvania educators to make sure that the questions that are on the PSSA or Keystone are field tested first before they even count. But the Pennsylvania educators, they draft those questions and they work in conjunction with Data Recognition Corps to make sure all 7 of these tasks are appropriate. And these technically should be what is carried into and applied to every summative assessment, mostly summative assessment. A lot of times your hands are tied with benchmarks because they're created for you, whether it be Acadians, Dibbles, whatnot. CDT, spot on. Data Recognition Corps, DRC, are the creators with Pennsylvania educators of the questions that go onto the CDT. So before a question even goes on the PSSA, Keystone, or CDT, you can be assured that that question has been vetted for targeted content standards, content level, cognitive level, development appropriate, so on and so forth. It's free of all of those via the field test. And if it doesn't hit a particular value, it's tossed or it's reworked. But if it does hit a particular value, then it rolls into the actual measure and it's applicable to a student. The CDT does the same exact thing. Sorry, the questions of the CDT are vetted the same way as they are for the PSSA and Keystone. But we're going to take a look at how you can turn some of these things into processes that your teachers on the front lines might be able to look at and say, holy smokes, this question might not necessarily, might give a particular demographic an advantage over another demographic. So that's potential, that's fairness, and so on and so forth. The top 2 on which we're going to focus, and through my experience, are targeted content standards and cognitive level. The other ones, developmentally appropriate, sensitive material, potential bias, fairness, editing, I'm not trying to diminish those. Those can be looked at through a lens and potentially bounced off another colleague or whatnot. But I think what is most turnkey, ready to go, is we need to be looking at what are we measuring, aiming to measure, in what degree does that item match a depth of knowledge. I'm going to pause there for any questions, comments, concerns. You can unmute, put them into the chat. Okay, I don't see anything. Let's jump down to, and I'm going to bounce us out to our Google folder. It was linked a little bit above, so hopefully you still have that open. But these are one of the things that when we did IU5 did an item rating and hand scoring across our Commonwealth, I think it was back in 2015, holy smokes. And this is where we got this document, it's selected response guidelines. And I'm going to steer us out to that document. It's in the Google folder. Here it is, it's a PDF. One of the most common questions that we see on a measure is a selected response, AKA a multiple choice. I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes. These are some simple practices that you could put into the hands of your educators that if they're designing selected response questions, or maybe even an opportunity to review a vendor made, are these practices in place? Because these are practices put in place by our data recognition core. I'm going to give you a second to read through this, 2 pages. I'm sorry, this is 8 pages. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. It's well worth it. So we'll come back together in about 15 seconds. A simple step of putting this guide for a selected response question into the hands of a teacher. When we would ask our educators to bring forth an assessment they use in their classroom, whether it's made or vendor made or whatnot, and taking a look and adding and applying these particular guidelines, a lot of times makes light bulbs go off, because we've always seen, none of the above, or maybe 5 or 6 different distractors, or one of the ones that I jumps out at me, I remember from data recognition core sharing this, is it's on page 4, and I have it highlighted here. Content of an item should not assume knowledge in order to complete a task. And I remember them calling out a particular question that was a math question that was talking about a clothesline, and where you, maybe if you didn't use a dryer, you would send your clothes out and it would dry. And one of the points was that gives a specific demographic an advantage over another, depending on where you live. You may not have kids that have any idea what a clothesline is. So that might be fairness or fairness for a specific group of students. Is there anything else anybody would like to add to this in terms of practices? You can use the chat, you can unmute. Okay, we're going to jump into our next portion. And this is a packet that we use when we facilitate our assessment literacy series, this among other things. But if you open up the reduced ALS packet, this practice here on this first page, we're not going to do this together, but this is putting your test items to the test and getting the educators to really think about what's the right reason, top left quadrant, that student got a correct response. They know the content. What's the wrong reason, top right corner quadrant, that the student got the correct answer? Maybe they guessed correctly. They just circled the right question. You can't avoid that, even if you draft a bulletproof selected response. What's the right reason a student got an incorrect response? Potentially they didn't notice. They didn't know the content. They didn't have mastery of the content. What's the wrong reason that a student got an incorrect response? Potentially there was bias or fairness issue. Perhaps the question is aligned to a different piece of targeted academic content. And one of our favorite is the test savvy taker. Based on those guidelines that we just looked at, in a selected response, this is an activity you could do with your teachers, kind of like an icebreaker. And we have them review all of these specific strategies that a test savvy student might utilize with going in to a test cold. Pretend you're a student. We're not going to do this here today. Pretend you're a student who hasn't studied and is coming into a test cold. Read each question carefully and circle the letter of the option you think is correct, and write your reason for selecting this option on the line below. You would utilize these strategies to answer these questions, which obviously make no sense at all. Now I'll do the first one together. The Bauer can cause the gumball to mast because A, B, C, or D. Anybody want to take a shot at that? What will be the correct answer based on the test savvy strategies? C. It's not C. I'll give you a hint. Avoiding absolutes. What's the correct answer? B. Yep. Very good. If you notice, all the other distractors, A, C, and D, use absolutes. No, must, all. The Gumbel usually vents. Therefore, if you're test savvy, you could take that down. There's other examples in here as well in terms of grammatical inconsistencies, of absolutes, patterns. Sometimes you can find answers that are correct because it's a lot longer, like in number 9. When in doubt, pick C for number 10, so on and so forth. It's a fun exercise, and it really gets the educator to start thinking about those selective response, which is the most common that we see in those summative measures. I want to scroll down a little bit further, and this is where we're going to take a break. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, but in this break, as you stand up and you stretch, I'd like you to pay particular attention in the next 4 pages to content alignment and depth of knowledge. As you look at this particular page, you'll notice that it overlays a lot with that table that we were looking at here. Content standards, cognitive level, developmentally appropriate, technical design, bias, fairness, sensitivity, universal design. As you scroll through in the next 5 minutes, I'd like you to scroll down, take a second to read through all 5, 6, 7. I'd like you to read through pages 6, 7, and 8. Then we're going to come back together at 12:19. Take a stretch break, grab yourself a cup of coffee, and read through these pages. Okay, one of the practices that we like to transition into after we've given our educators kind of that surface level scratching of content alignment, depth of knowledge, estimated difficulty, so on and so forth, is we really like to focus them on specifically what are you aiming to measure, and specifically what are those academic or eligible content standards. You could go larger out to the anchor and then drill in much further, but nonetheless, it's super important for an understanding of what is intended to be measured and how those questions are drafted. So once you have that content alignment to that specific standard, how often is that specific standard or piece of eligible content being measured? Is it being measured 6 times over the course of 3 selective response, and then 3 short constructed response, 4 selective response, and 2 extended constructed responses? How is that layout happening throughout the course of your assessment? That's the end result. That's what we're trying to get them to. And Andrew, I'm kind of touching on the surface of what Andrew's going to be doing when he starts to talk about on Thursday about assessment planning and laying out that academic plan for what you intend to measure. I'm going to give you an entry-level tool that we use to couple with depth of knowledge. You may or may not be familiar with Dr. Norman Webb's work around depth of knowledge, but it carries its place into our summative assessments, the PSSA and the Keystone. And I'm back in the folder, the Google folder, in the depth of knowledge folder. And 2 particular resources that we direct our educators to is the rigor meter and the question stems. So let's take a look at the rigor meter first. We'll start with level 1, simple recall. So at this point, we're familiarizing our educators with what is DOK level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, you can start off by saying you're not going to find a level 4 in any form of summative measure, because that's that extended thinking, evaluation, and creation. But we can and will find DOK level 1. I'm sorry, you will find DOK level 2 and 3, and very rarely a 1 on a PSSA or Keystone. Your text-dependent analysis questions or level 3 questions. Vast majority of the questions that are found on your PSSA and Keystone are DOK level 2 and 3. So not only have we given our educators the tools to look at the selected response questions, to look at their distractors, the question stems, is that properly formatted? Is it free of academic as a bias, and so on and so forth. Now we're looking at writing questions at a DOK level 2 or 3. One of the things that I went back and did whenever I first started facilitating this is I used a vendor when I had my social studies class, when I taught civics and economics, and I pulled that assessment from there. This was used way back in 2005. And I went through each one of those questions and did my best to identify those at DOK 1, 2, or 3. Overwhelmingly, those questions were written at a DOK level 1. And that's fine. There's a place for a 1. But when you're measuring at the level at which DRC and the PSSA and Keystone are being measured, they're measuring at a 2 and a 3. So I've had some districts ask, they say, Nick, well, what level, what percentage of our tests should be a DOK level 1 or 2 or 3? And that's ideally up to you. I would say 66%, 2/3 or more of your summative measure should be written at a DOK 2 or 3. That's just my personal feeling. No basis for that. If anybody else has anything, you're more than welcome to weigh in the chat. I do see something here in the chat. Thank you, Andrew, throwing stuff in the chat. Nice thing about this is it gives you some questioning techniques. In the third column over, and also the question stems. We kind of glossed over the academics. We're going to come back to that. Those standards that those questions are aligned. We jumped right into depth of knowledge, primarily because we've given them the question stems, selected response. Now we're going to jump into the depth of knowledge. At this point, we put this side by side, and we're asking them to review that summative assessment that they brought with them and identify those questions as 2 or 3 or 1. And last, but certainly not least, is a tool that must be used in conjunction with the PDE SAS portal, the SAS portal. This assessment blueprinting, it's under designing assessments, and I'm sorry, I will get rid of that so you all can hit refresh. It should be under designing assessments. And there's 2 different formats here. We'll start with the Excel file. And this brings it all together. So as the educator is sitting there looking at this assessment, looking at a specific question, first off, we want to know what is that academic standard that we're aiming to measure. So they would work in conjunction with the SAS portal, bring over a particular standard or piece of eligible content, paste the eligible content here, and you'll find that there are multiple questions written for that particular piece of eligible content. And the light bulb may go off and say, holy smokes, I'm asking 7 different questions around this particular piece of eligible content. And the next one down, I'm only asking 2 questions. And oh, by the way, both of them are written to DOK level 1. Nice thing about it, once they populate these, you have a clean, separate sheet that gives you the percentages, and it breaks it down for you for where that eligible content, how much of it is being measured, and at what level it is being measured, depth of knowledge. The second one is very similar. That first one does not call out the question type. This one would. You call out your standard or piece of eligible content, the question type, depth of knowledge, number of questions, and point value. Whichever one you'd prefer, it's up to you. There's also tools that Andrew's going to be going over when we get to Thursday session with assessment planning. I'm going to pause here for any questions, comments. Thank you, Andrew, for throwing those all in there. Should you want to do an activity with your staff under the depth of knowledge tab, under the reduced ALS packet, when you get down to page 16, there's actually an exercise where it spells out the reading, English language arts, DOK levels. And then there's a short quiz here for your participants to identify these questions after reading the passage. Identify the questions as a DOK level 1, 2, or 3. And again, that starts on page 16. And Stu, you had asked about the answers to the test savvy taker. I'm gonna put those in here. But the nice thing about this packet is the answers are on slide 25 for you. So should you want to do a practice of identifying depth of knowledge, you could do something here. When we do this with staff that have created their own questions, or maybe you're using a vendor, they really get into the into the aspect of splitting hairs over a DOK level 2 or a 3. If you can identify it as not a 1, and it's either a 2 or a 3, then you're on the right track. Then you have a solid question. But if you're splitting hairs as whether it's a 1 or a 2, it's worth splitting those hairs. One of the last things I'm going to show you here is slide 18. If you're after vetted, tried or true examples of questions that are written that keep in mind this quality assurance checklist, I'm going to show you where those are. One, you can go to the CDT. The CDT is vetted, tried, and true, all those questions. Your other options you'll find at the SAS portal. This has gotten a recent facelift, and it's pretty phenomenal tool. Under the Assessments tab, you'll go to the Assessment Center. And within the Assessment Center, you're going to see a database of standards aligned questions that you can drill right to. You're after a specific piece of eligible content and you want questions anchored to that, it's there. Also, you'll notice that I'm logged in the top right-hand corner. It says Nick SAS Tools. Anything that you find and you want to go build an assessment, you can archive it in your personal ePortfolio, or My Assessments, I'm sorry. If you want to see a particular question or provide some examples to teachers as exemplary questions, keyword search. '52 based on the United States Constitution. If you wanted to build a specific assessment, you would simply click Add to My Assessment, but all of these questions are vetted and approved with this quality assurance checklist in mind. And I have to say that this got a mega facelift, I want to say about a year, 2 years ago, and there was an inordinate amount of questions that were added to it, and it's solid, rock solid. You can drill to a specific discipline, assessment type, features, course, so on and so forth. A lot of great resources there, and plus you can save it, you can export it, gives you an answer key, teacher key, whatnot. Another fantastic resource, many of you are probably already familiar with, and it's on slide 18, are your item samplers. I just happened to click the English Language Arts Resources, PSSA. You have your Math PSSA, Science PSSA, and Keystone Samplers. But if we drill into one of these samplers, take a look at 6th grade ELA. All of the practices from that quality assurance checklist are in play here. And the nice thing about these is they break them down for you in terms of what's the passage, what's the question, what's the alignment, what's the right, what's the depth of knowledge, what's the p-value, that's the specific from the field test of how many students, I don't want to misspeak to that. But we talk specifically about our top two, alignment and depth of knowledge. And very, very, very rarely, folks, will you find a depth of knowledge level 1. I'm going to pause for a second and open up for any questions or comments. Yes, can we have the answers to the quiz, please? Yes, Annette. Sarah, I'm going to bug you. Do you have everybody's email on this call that's connected? Could I get an email out to everybody?
Yes, if everybody registered through the patent website, we should be able to do so. And if they're not quite sure or they're afraid they'll miss out, they're welcome to direct message me in the chat window and I'll make sure they get added.
Thank you, Sarah. And I will promise you, all of you, because I have to go dig up the how test wise are you. I have to scan it because I have a hard copy here back from 2015. I know I have a scanned one somewhere, but I would throw it in the chat, but I promise you that email will be coming for the reduced ALS packet. Andrew, is there anything you can think of that I missed?
No, I think it's all set.
Okay, then at this time, if anybody has any questions or concerns, please feel free to throw them into the chat. I'm going to put my contact information as well as Andrew's contact information up on the screen. I'll also throw it into the chat. Don't hesitate me if at any time. I know we went through a lot. If you'd like to try to get something off the ground in terms of assessment literacy series, my email's in the chat. That's my cell phone number there. You can always reach out to me and say, hey, I was from this and this. Can I have that resource, please? I'd be happy to provide you with that information. And I'm going to need a second because I have a code for you guys. I have to pull it out of my email. Sorry, I failed to put that on there. Gotcha. All right, here we go. That's something that you're going to need to write down. I apologize for the formatting issues, for somehow that didn't make it in there. But the exit code for this session is 92501. And you can submit your attendance using that link. I will post that tiny URL in the chat, so you all have the opportunity to enter the correct code. I'm going to put that into the chat again, because I messed that up the first time. There we go. And the code is 92501. Now I want to thank everybody for coming out and connecting with us this morning, and now it's afternoon. So Sarah, it looks like we have some folks that are populating their email addresses in there, and I will get, thank you, Sarah. I didn't even notice you did that, attendance link and tech to exit code. I entered this as a live session from the attendance form, but this session is not listed. Is there another choice I should select?
Hey, Jennifer, we just refreshed it so that today's session would appear. So if you just refresh that form link, you'll see it as 8.3 local assessment.
Thank you, Sarah.
Caught again?
It's if you go to the live session, it's the last one. It's got today's date, 8.3, and local assessments.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I wish you the best as we enter into the 21-22 school year. Keep doing great stuff. You guys are on the front lines. Thank you for all you do.